Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors, experts in the biggest questions in tech. This is Making Revenue Tick. So we've just finished recording this AI special of Making Revenue Tick. Justin, for people just joining now, what are they going to hear about in the next hour or so?
Yeah, in this video, you guys are going to learn your AI tech stack, why building is never time wasted, what the future of revenue looks like, both from an organizational perspective and an agentic perspective, and then what the future of career development and hiring might have in store. So if you feel like you're getting left behind with AI and what's going on right now, watch this video afterwards, come find me, and let's talk.
Amazing. It was so perfect. There's nothing much to add other than I know a hell of a lot of people are right now really wanting to use AI and are really just paying it lip service. So let's help them to get ahead of the game. Let's roll the VT. Hello and welcome to a special episode of Making Revenue Tick with my good friend, Justin Parnell. Justin, how you doing?
I'm great, Rich. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
I'm excited because I think we're going to tackle a topic today that a lot of people are talking about. A lot of people are paying lip service to, myself included. And everyone wants to know what on earth should we be doing, could we be doing, and will we be doing, and how do we get ahead of it? And that topic is AI. So I'll very briefly introduce you for our listeners. So Justin, you are a former founder, 3-time VP of marketing. You've been in this B2B SaaS world for 10 years, and you're helping businesses to learn how to utilize AI to become, I guess, force multipliers within their industries, which is really exciting. I think that it would be really interesting to just ask you a question straight off the bat, which is, when you're working with clients today, what's the biggest question that they're coming to you with?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the market is kind of still in the early adopter phase, and a lot of folks are just getting their hands on some of the chat tools that are out there and getting their feet wet, starting to understand how these models work, what their capabilities are. And most folks in this go-to-market realm are trying to figure out, how can I achieve leverage with AI that my competitors can't? How can I leverage this to generate more revenue? How can I leverage this to be more efficient with my team? And then the folks that are really starting to like get out there beyond like their initial use cases, they're starting to consider new systems of working, right? Like, what does the GTM team look like now, right? Is it going to be like marketing, sales, support like it was in the past? Or with AI, is it going to collapse down to really just one unit that's driving revenue, right? And I think that's probably like the people that are out there on the frontier that have like achieved leverage are then starting to consider those things.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I will definitely talk about all of those things, particularly about the future, because I think that's fascinating. Because I don't think many people are actually there yet, but some people are way ahead of the game. I know how we got introduced was because you obviously work very closely with Jacob Warwick, who's, longtime friend of the pod, and he talked about working with you in a lot of the tools and developments and innovations that you guys are working on together. And I remember Tolo and my own eyes just lighting up, going, "Wow, this sounds amazing!" And the tools that you've helped to build, I send out to everyone. So if there are people like looking to go and like optimize their LinkedIn profile, bam, I'm sending them across to your LinkedIn review tool. The interview preparation reports is unbelievable. The feedback I've had from executives all the way through to, account executives who are preparing for important interviews. They're like, what, this costs like $15 and I can go and like get a 40-page report about someone's personality profile and how I can make an impact. They're phenomenal. So that's how we got introduced to each other. And then there was a particular thing that Jacob said to me on a DM on LinkedIn, which made me feel really bad. And it was, "Hey, Rich, what's your tech stack for AI?" And I realized it's so bad. My tech stack is terrible. I use AI every day, but I'm pretty much been using AI for the same way for about a year. And so I definitely haven't kept up with all the innovations. and we use it for like really basic stuff, like turning this podcast into clips through Opus and doing some scheduling and stuff like that. But it's super, super, super basic. And then I was like, how could we maybe spend a bit more time together, potentially, maybe build some cool AI agents together, but more importantly, bring all this expertise that you've had around working with toddlers of AI like myself, and then like helping us to become a little bit more developed. Because I think the big thing, like when Jacob asked me that question around my AI tech stack and I felt very vulnerable, is most people don't want to feel left behind.
Yeah,
And there's a real
definitely.
danger of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's the classic FOMO of, getting left behind, and then there's the classic greed motivation of how can I achieve leverage that my competitors don't have, right? So on both sides, you have folks that are concerned for one reason or another. And yeah, just getting to your tech stack question, because I think that's where we're going. Like, what is the tech stack people should be working with? Um, the way that I see people kind of learn to adopt and then start developing their tech stack is doing things like you mentioned, like getting into the chat console and then playing around with, Opus or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever the chat tool is, even Grok, for the super brave that are out there. It's a great way to get your feet wet and start to learn the capabilities and understand like how the technology performs. But even then, I challenge most people to go out and do a little bit more education about the technology itself from a first principles standpoint. And what I mean by that is like, think about the technology and what it, fundamentally does as like a transformer model, and go out and learn a little bit about this transformer models and next token prediction and gradient descent and things like that. Because if you can think about the technology in that way, you're then going to be able to conceive of ways to apply the technology to your work that is going to lead to fewer false starts and more, hits with what you're implementing, right? At its core, AI models, no matter how sophisticated they might be, if people say there's reasoning and thinking and all of these things, at its core, it is doing what they call next token prediction. And based on all of the knowledge that it's been trained on and the query you give it, it's trying to predict the next word, right? Like in its response. So that at its core is the technology. And if that kind of technology can be leveraged for your job to be done, thinking again from first principles, and it will create leverage for that job to be done, make you more efficient, reduce costs, then it's probably a great application and a great place to start thinking about now how might I uh, build my tech stack to infuse AI for this job to be done, and where can it be infused in ways that are really going to make a meaningful difference for this work. And if you think about it that way, you're going to get yourself out of trouble. When I see people getting in trouble with AI is when they anthropomorphize it and they think about it like a person, because they've had these like chat experiences. They're really starting to think about it like, it's a co-collaborator, a person. And it can, then they start to naturally feel like, okay, well, this can do work like a person, right? Like this could be a person on my team doing work. And really, next token prediction gives you that false feeling of like a person talking to you because it's language. And then you just extend your expectations into like, oh, this should work like a person. It should be able to do multiple domains. It should be able to connect the dots of tasks. And really that's not what it does, right, at its core. So you're starting to get into trouble if you start thinking about it that way and stop thinking about like, okay, it's really doing next token prediction. This genie does this trick really, really well. Now, where can I apply that technology in my work and in my jobs to be done to give me leverage, right? And that's how I would challenge people to think about it. And then if you can grok that, and I don't mean grok the chatbot, I mean like understand that, then you can start to think about, okay, I want this thing to help me write awesome emails for outbounding. I want this thing to, do social media posts. I want it to analyze like my competitors' website keyword strategy and,
Yeah.
expose gaps that I can exploit. And those are all great applications, right, for what the technology can do. And you can start to connect the dots on those things, and we can talk about the tech stack to do that if that's where we want to go.
Yeah, for sure. We can definitely talk about tech stack. Let's talk about you first. I'm really
Sure.
curious to how you got turned on to this all. You know, when I go
Yeah.
onto LinkedIn, it's, Justin GPT. When I go onto YouTube, it's Justin GPT. You are clearly positioned as someone who deeply understands this. You've deeply invested into this. You're helping other people to get leverage through the technology. How did you get turned on to it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a naturally curious person my entire life, and I always have enjoyed like learning things myself, teaching myself things. So I'm a bit of a weirdo in terms of that. But when GPT-3 came out, I was, a VP of marketing at a Series B sized SaaS company, executing in the trenches, like I'm sure a lot of your listeners are, right? Trying to get to that next revenue milestone. And we were making great progress, charging hard. And then all of a sudden, GPT-3, boom, is out there. And people in my company started talking about it. Hey, did you see this? What's going on? And so I went out and I started playing with the GPT-3 ChatGPT chatbot. And, it was interesting at that point, and the technology was clearly very powerful. And so I got very curious about how does this work? Starting to think about it from first principles, break down the pieces and understand the technology, so that I could apply it to my work and help me gain leverage like most people want to do. I'm probably like early adopter, in the hype cycle or the market adoption curve. I'm like at the very front for most technologies. So I went out and took some, educational courses from Google that were out there to learn about transformer models, to learn about, the underlying technology. And then I started consuming, I went a step further and learned about the teams that had developed the transformer model. So I learned about Jeffrey Hinton and Ilya Sutskever and Demis Hassabis, right? And Noam Brown and all these people that were involved in Google DeepMind and the first transformer models. And I started listening to all of their content. So I went and found Ilya on Lex Fridman's podcast. He'd done, at that point, I think 2 or 3 interviews. And I just started listening to him talk about everything. And I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this guy is so smart. And like he's created this amazing new technology. And once I started to understand how it worked, it really reminded me of like in the way he thinks about it, the human brain, right? That's the way Google DeepMind approached the technology is how do we build machines that act like neurons, right? And think like neurons and think like people. And it just fascinated me. And I just learned more and more and more. And then I started, trying to apply it in ways that I thought would give me leverage with my team. So I started using it to help me write. I started using it to, do basic writing at that point, like GPT 3.5, GPT-4. We're just doing like email drafting. We're doing press releases. We're doing blog content, right? And it's a lot of human in the loop, a lot of someone else, massaging that content and making it, usable at that point. It's not as good as it is today.
Yeah.
And then I started, and through all that process, I was learning about prompting, prompt engineering, different prompting techniques to get better outputs, reverse engineering, providing, sample outputs, right, to get really, really great outputs like you want, post-training techniques, all of this stuff that started to emerge to make the models perform better. And I just stayed on the cusp of all of this. Once APIs opened up for it, I was tying into the APIs, playing around with the developer platforms. I remember with Jacob specifically, like, when I was working with him, he would come to me in those early days and just ask me for advice and say, like, hey, what should I be doing? How should I be leveraging this? And with some of these things, I was like, hey, I think we can really, you have such a strong point of view on how people should be, optimizing their LinkedIn profiles, about how people should be doing their interviews. Um, I think with your point of view, we could create some artifacts and advice for people via APIs that are very, very powerful that people could leverage on demand, right? And so we started experimenting and building, and one thing led to another. We started creating these agents to help, review people's LinkedIn profiles, get them ready for interviews. Those are the early days in the lab, out there doing the building. And then, yeah, nowadays, like, I do these things for other people, right? Teams that are interested in developing agents to help them do whatever it is they want to do. I help guide them through the tech stack and the crazy world of different kinds of applications and providers that are out there. I'm familiar with most of them, and I'm kind of like a Sherpa. I'm like, I've seen the frontier, guys. Do you want to climb the mountain? Let's go. Like, I can I can take you up the mountain, and guide you down the right path where you're not going to get lost. So that's kind of where I am now. And yeah, I mean, that's a long-winded answer, but that's step by step how it all happened, and how I ended up here today. And from my founder roots, I've been a builder and a believer in building technology and systems. So I guess that's a bit in my DNA as well.
So I'm curious that, you were a founder. You say that, when GPT-3 came out, you were working as a VP of marketing at a Series B company. So you were an entrepreneur. And now you're working with companies. So you're an entrepreneur again, but also still a bit of an entrepreneur. That's how I feel as a service provider. I'm always working with clients, helping them to make their dreams come true. I just wonder, how different is life now for you as a founder post AI than it was pre AI?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the reason I'm able to produce as much content as I do is because of the leverage that I've gained from AI. I think, like, a lot of the folks that I work with are, just like you and me, Rich. They're solopreneurs, small teams of people that are running with like 1 to 5 to 10 people, that are, doing decent amounts of revenue, supporting their teams and their business. And they are constantly strapped for time, and they constantly want to do more. And AI, in my opinion, has really leveled the playing field for these kinds of businesses. For me, for you, right? I think, like, we're 10xing our productivity and the amount of content we can bring to the market with all of the new tools that exist. I mean, we're using it for editing, we're using it for all kinds of stuff these days. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm 10x more capable than I was before. I just did a video yesterday that's, centered around the solopreneurs out there that want to connect Claude to their Wix website and allow Claude to code web pages for them, right? You can go right into your Claude console and just, like, connect an MCP server, they call it. And then you can type into Claude and say, hey, I want to create a new pricing page, or I want to update my pricing on my pricing page, or I want to do an FAQs on my homepage or my product page. And Claude can just go code that on your on your page for you now, right? That's incredible leverage. Think about the old workflow. Oh man, I got to update my website. I got to go to my web guy. I got to file a ticket in Jira. I've got to, like, write the copy myself. I've got to, and you just go into Claude and have, like, a brief conversation with Claude. Claude can give you a preview of what it's going to look like. And you say, yeah, that looks good. Let's go, and it's live on your website. So, I mean, that's a very simple example, but that is massive leverage that collapsed what used to take a change multiple days down to minutes. So if you do that across your stack, like, we're 10x. 10x is low bar. I feel like 100x is, like, going to be the average bar for most people pretty soon.
That's the one of the oldest problems in the world, is that people say my positioning doesn't reflect the reality, right? I remember when I started as an SDR in 2007, the role play to join the company, so it was like a sales role, was a script called Demon Designs, and it was this technology that helped a language school to go and update their website and turn it into a revenue generating machine rather than just a static piece of content. So that was the role play we did. And we had that for 10 years in the business. So that was everyone that came into our old business did Demon Designs. And so that's always been a problem. It's the problem I have today. So we recorded a bunch of videos 3 months ago, and I'm going, I just need to get round to writing the copy so that I can update this part of my website because my case studies are out of date. Our positioning on the services is slightly different. I've tweaked our headline since then. And it's become this task that I'm going, I just don't have the headspace or the technical knowledge to go and do it myself. So I'm going to have to go and get my guy, like you just said. And I'm going, oh, this is very interesting. The other thing that you mentioned, which is really interesting, is that about Claude integrating with Wix. One of the chaps we had on the podcast called Ido Shlomo, who's the CTO of Token Security, which is like a Series A business. They've just raised 20 million for non-human machine identity. His brother, Mayor Shlomo, created Base 44,
I was gonna say,
which,
yeah, is this the same Shlomo from Base
yeah,
44? Yeah.
exactly. Who just created this company, AI, basically exactly what you've just said, and they sold it like for 60 million to Wix. And I'm going, all these companies, like you've mentioned, they're realizing if they don't do this through acquisition or they go and build it, which I assume is incredibly hard to go and build it, they're gonna get just completely I suppose disrupted without being in control of how people are utilizing their tools. It's fascinating, right?
Right. Yeah, I think this early like use case for editing web content and coding with Claude Code is massively exposed. I'm sure everyone's seen all over LinkedIn. Lovable raised 100 million. Bolt.new fastest ARR growth rate in
Yeah.
history. Da da da. Beat ChatGPT. This is a very common use case where yes, like your Wixes of the world, your Squarespaces of the world, I would be looking at Shopify too, like all these companies are probably either trying to develop this internally or looking at acquiring some of these guys like Base 44. Um, so yeah, I mean, the friction point there is like, oh, can someone set up an MCP server, connect it to Wix or whatever other tool, and then, go into the chat console with Claude and use Claude code to like actually develop the web page? Or do they just need like a wrapper UI where you just go to Lovable, or Bolt and start interacting with it there? And they've realized that that friction point for early adopters is high enough right now where they can interject themselves there, grab such a valuable thing like somebody's website, have someone develop it via chat, and then people are going to be like, you know what, this is so easy for me to do that I would rather just work with Lovable and bring my domain over to Lovable and deploy my site from Lovable than deal with Wix or deal with Squarespace or anything else because I can just do it all here myself. And the friction of the old process was so, annoying and time consuming that like the value there is tremendous. And there's so much value that I will go to the trouble of like unhooking my domain and rehooking it back up over here to gain that level of leverage that I have with this new tool. So yeah, I mean, Base 44, Wix was smart to buy them because, people are unhooking from Wix and hooking into Lovable and hooking into these other services just because of the amount of leverage they're getting and the convenience. And, I'm going to say leverage over and over and over again because that's what AI is, giving you. And in this use case, next token prediction for coding is a really good one, right? Like code is text and next token prediction for text is what AI does best. So coders that code in text, AI is coming for that, and it's coming for that first. So be forewarned because these AI companies do a lot of coding themselves. They know how to develop that product, right? And they know what that looks like. So,
Yeah.
you didn't ask that question yet, but that is something I would be concerned about if I was a coder.
Well, let's talk about that. Where's most valuable? I suppose because what I'd love to ask you about, but maybe I want to follow that thought is about tech stack and like what you think about like GPT-5 that I spent the whole weekend just going, oh my god, it's the best thing in the universe, and then realize I don't use Claude, and I don't Claude, and I don't use Gemini, and I don't use any of the other ones. I don't use Perplexity. I'm so basic, it hurts, Justin.
Right.
So
Yes.
what in your experience now with all of these companies investing so much in innovating their version of AI that people will be using maybe as the sole thing that they do. A lot of people will just be on chat or don't believe in chat and they think Perplexity is better. what would you recommend?
As like a base model to leverage, or just the full stack of
Okay, so
tools?
maybe here's the question, because if I say what would you recommend, it's like without any diagnosis, what medicine would you give this patient that you've done no diagnosis on? So how naive am I that I only use chat when there's all these other solutions out there, and why is it important to be looking beyond just one console?
Yeah, I think for where you're at in like the adoption process, there's nothing wrong with getting comfortable with one solution, one provider, and learning how to leverage it deeply. I think that the natural curiosity there to keep pushing the boundaries of that model is what's going to lead you into eventually using other models. You're going to hit some kind of roadblock and you're going to be like, damn, I really wish this thing could do, it's not doing what I want. I'm not quite getting the outputs I want. Maybe if I tried Gemini, right? Maybe if I tried Claude, like I'm just going to go over there, I'm going to try this there and I'm going to see like what happens. And you start to push the boundaries of what's possible with your current model, and you're becoming deeply familiar with the limitations, the capabilities, what that model can do and not do. And that's going to lead you to other models, right? Like you'll be like, man, ChatGPT, like it's great for X, Y, and Z, but like Gemini is just a little bit better. And then I really love Claude because of the way Claude sounds, and the outputs I get from Claude are really nice. Or now with GPT-5, like this is being rolled back, but they deprecated access to like all the old models, right? And I've seen a lot of blowback because of that, because people really loved the way that 4.0 sounded, or they loved the way that 4.1 worked, or whatever. They developed some workflow that was giving them amazing outputs. And then when GPT-5 slots in and they don't get the same output right anymore, they're like, what the hell? And now people are like upset about that. They lost access to their friend or their favorite model. And they're going to go to other models and see if they can get that kind of output. But that's like, for where you're at, that's completely fine. Be a power user of ChatGPT, go deep, learn where it's limited, and then go to the other models and start playing with those. I, the next step beyond that is like, once you start to build applications, like we're going to work on one tomorrow. So this is where you'll get exposed to some of the other things that these models can do. You're going to get really interested in things like the context window size. You're going to get interested in things like memory. You're going to get interested in things like assistant versus like a gym versus a custom GPT, and like all these like nuanced things that are, in the back end that you're going to want to leverage for an app that you're building or a service that you're building. Think about, Jacob's, interview tool, right? Like that actually leverages set like, I want to say almost every model for specific jobs to be done, right? So in the interview prep document that you get 4 different reports. And one of them is, about your resume and your experience versus the company's job description and what they're looking for there. And so, there's like a perplexity model that goes out and researches, all of your previous experience and the company's JD and like what the company's saying they want to accomplish. And it's like then providing all of that content over to another AI model that then analyzes all of that and says, okay, here's the report that aligns you to this job role and like what the company says their mission is and what they're looking to achieve. There's multiple models happening there because of like the different functionality. You can only do deep research with Perplexity and OpenAI. You can't do it with Gemini. You can't do it with Claude via their API, right? And so you're limited to a certain number of tools that can do those things for your app. But that's the next stage, right? You'll get there next. If you are building like, here's another one for a revenue team. If you're like looking at, a new league comes in and you want to go out and do, account prep for your sales team so that when they call on the lead, they're like, they know everything about this account. They know everything about the person that came in, all the research is done for them. You may have a workflow that's like new lead from Salesforce triggers, Perplexity to go out and deep research the company and pay specific attention to these things that are, important to our qualification criteria. And then, provide that to OpenAI to analyze this and prepare like a dossier for an AE to call and follow up. What questions should the AE be asking to confirm, or like, what did Perplexity not find for me? And you've got like, and then feed that back into Salesforce, right? And you've got like multiple models running here based on like what they do best. And that's like the next stage you'll get to, right? You'll really care about that kind of stuff at that level. And you'll go wherever you have to go to find it. You'll be like, can Gemini do this? Can Anthropic do this? Like, do I need to go to Perplexity? Do I need to go to, I mean, God forbid, Grok? What's the model? I don't want to make the Elon fans mad, but like, I just have, for business use cases, Grok's like, a little sketchy sometimes. So I typically like will shy away unless like I really need to use Grok for some.
It kind of makes me want to use Grok.
I mean, if you're automating things with Grok, you need to be making sure it's passing your evals, because like its hallucinations can be like brand impacting. Let's
Oh,
just put it that way.
interesting. There's so many thoughts that get triggered when you're saying all of these things. I think that what I've realized is that we're funny as human beings, because whilst you have this very curious and agnostic nature, like whatever's best, I'll use, and we're going to create the right solution from all of these parts. We're funny as people in the fact that we associate our identity to this, and it's like, why some people are like iPhone versus Samsung and Android. And I remember that Android marketing slogan, which was like, be together, not the same. And I was like, I really love this bit of marketing, but I'm thinking it's marketing. And I'm going, well, as an Android user, yeah, now finally the first cool thing Android's ever done that sounds cooler than what Apple did at that time. But I just realized that my identity is linked to a certain thing. I don't really feel that way about AI. I feel like I've learned I'm using chat, and I'm okay at it compared to the average Joe. But there are people in a completely different level to me. But I genuinely feel like vulnerable, and like I should be doing much more around these different tools. And I just wonder how you see the way that humans are, where we're very territorial and we link identity to this is the right tool for us, and these things are the enemy, and these things are the devil. Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think there's two lenses to look at this. And, there is the consumer lens and then there's the business lens. And I think that, yes, in the consumer world, like where you're talking about iPhone tribe versus the Pixel tribe or the Android tribe, the consumers are very loyal to a certain model. And one of the big blowbacks from GPT-5 is like, I saw like a GPT-5 Reddit thread that got started where it was like somebody saying that like every day I would get up and I would talk to GPT-4o, and like I don't have anyone to talk to, and it would talk to me like a friend, and it would give me like a paragraph on how to like get through my day. And like now GPT-4o is gone, and like I don't know how to cope with like this. It's like major blowback. But one of the hypotheses is what you're saying. uh in the AI space, there will be lock-in like Apple has with the iPhone, or like Android has with Android users, when these models become, on the consumer side, when they become super personal. When they have memory, when they become your friend or your advisor, they know everything about you from all the metadata that you've like linked and given it access to. And the cost of switching as a consumer from, ChatGPT to Gemini to whatever becomes massive, because you feel like you're going to have to start over, much like your iCloud, or, your lock-in that you have with your Apple service, whatever services you have through Apple, and your family sharing or whatever you do. That's like lock-in, right? You're locked into Apple now, Apple Pay, all these other things. The lock-in for consumers in AI models is probably on personalization and how well it knows you. And I think like just reading the tea leaves of like what OpenAI is doing and what Google's doing and what other people are doing, They're trying to connect and consume that data from you so that their models do become hyper personal. And OpenAI is trying to create some device, like ambient AI device, like I'd say our phones are ambient. Honestly, they like are listening all the time to what, we're
100%.
saying. We get ads, after conversations. But something like that, that like is sitting with you all the time, if it's glasses, if it's, whatever it is. And they think that that's going to give them more lock-in. And I kind of think it's right in seeing some of the blowback that they're getting now with like losing that personalization. And personalization is not just about data and memory. It's about the model performance. This person lost access to 4.0. That doesn't mean that OpenAI has any less data on you. They still have all the same data. The GPT-5 knows the same stuff that 4.0 knew. GPT-5 has different pre-training and post-training, which are like pre-training is like the data that it was trained on in its training run, which you hear about all the time. These massive training runs. GPT-5 had a new training run, and was trained on new data. And then post-training, which is like, this is how you're supposed to act, right? And this is how you're supposed to model your responses. And so OpenAI does a lot of work post-training these models. And because of that, it's going to feel different than 4.0, right? It still knows the same stuff. So personalization is not just about memory, it's also about the model. And that's going to create lock-in eventually on the consumer side. I think like, look at silver linings. If you're OpenAI, your hypothesis looks like it's showing signs of validation on consumer lock-in and personalization. So, give people 4.0 and then like move on with a win there, right? And like, make the Reddit thread happy, I guess. But then on the business side, it's different, right? And I think like on the business side, achieving like tribal lock-in is going to really depend upon performance and cost. And if you're a business, like those are your primary concerns, right? Like, is the performance and capabilities of this model going to do what I want it to do for my business use case? And then how much does it cost? Right? Is there another model that can do this cheaper? And I think like tribalism will happen when you get like enterprise lock-in and you get these like enterprise like agreements that take place, and it's like, oh, our company can only use OpenAI because like, data security, like the CIO and our favorite friends over in procurement, right? They're gonna like basically choose a model that the company goes with, and then you're gonna be stuck with that. But they're gonna evaluate on like, what are our jobs to be done as a company? What are our security standards? What is the cost of this thing versus the cost of, another model that's out there? And it's going to break down along those lines. And I think like enterprise lock-in will happen after that initial purchasing decision is made, and ripping and replacing is going to be more painful with these AI models at an enterprise level than it ever has been with a SaaS product. Just because of the amount of data that they start to accumulate. And ripping that out and then moving to a new platform is going to be more painful than like ripping out a SaaS product and moving to like from like Salesforce to HubSpot or whatever, right? Like that's just the lock-in there is going to be more extreme, I think. And I think companies are right to like approach that cautiously now, because the cost of switching is going to be insane. It's better to let the business units kind of experiment with like their own stuff and figure out like what's working best for them, and kind of analyze like this early adopter, don't lock into anything, be agnostic in the business world right now. And see if like a front runner emerges where the business can make that commitment at an enterprise level. And then there will be lock-in at some point. And I think like it's also breaking down along the lines of the hyperscalers, like who controls our cloud environment. If AWS is like partnering with Anthropic deeply, Microsoft is obviously ChatGPT, Google is GCP, right? And it's really breaking down along those lines too, where it's like, oh, we have GCP, we can just turn on Gemini or Google Agent Space, and it just works in our environment. And, Amazon's a bit more agnostic. They have Bedrock, and like you can apply any model in Bedrock in your AWS thing. But they've obviously invested heavily in Anthropic, right? And there's a reason, they probably, plan on doing some special like AWS performative stuff. If you use Anthropic models, it'll be cheaper, or Anthropic is like more optimized for AWS or something like that. And, if you're an Azure Microsoft shop, you're going to be locked into OpenAI, along those like cloud vectors. So there'll probably be the same like hyperscaler tribalism, that emerges as well.
It'll be interesting because it's obviously, businesses are just people, right? It's like whenever people show these creds decks of the clients that they work with, they've got all these logos like, yeah, we work at Nike and Adidas and, HP or whatever. I'm like, no, you work with an individual who staked their like reputation on choosing you
Right.
because you understood them and did a good pitch and ultimately chose it. So there's like this whole, the way that we've traditionally bought SaaS has very much been a human to human buying relationship.
Yeah.
And that relationship is carried on through like the account management or CS relationship, and people go and play golf and they go to each other's weddings and stuff like that. But we're seeing more and more of people just doing their own research and, like you say, training AI to do research on people. And that's very much from like a sort of, we're helping us to sell to you, but it's also helping from a, we're going to go and train models to help us buy.
Right.
So we don't have to talk to as many people. So we're not open to as much of, being set the wrong expectations and being oversold and all those sorts of things that come from bad salespeople. I'm
Yeah,
just
man.
wondering what's your view
The emotional
around that?
buyer, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
the emotional. I really like this guy. This guy's the guy, right? Like, you buy a lot, but yeah, AI doesn't have emotions, so takes that part out of it. Yeah, so I see where this question is going, and I do have a strong point of view on this. I think, again, thinking from first principles, what does AI do well? It doesn't need rest. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't, it can stick to the buying criteria. It can do all of these things really, really well. It's not anthropomorphized as a human, right? You train it on what your criteria is as a business to, procure something or buy something. It's going to go out and look for the thing that's the next token prediction of what that criteria is, right? And it'll use gradient descent to find, even if it's not perfect, it'll find the thing that goes down the gradient descent curve that's closest to the bottom, and it will optimize to that, right? And so what is coming and whether or not people are ready for this is a whole nother question, but there will be buying and selling agents, and that is coming. And you will see companies, creating RFP agents that have like the criteria from whichever business unit that was, involved in creating the RFP, will be present, and they will go out to a provider space where provider agents are just sitting there ambiently waiting for a procurement agent to show up and say, hey, tell me what you got, right? Like, expose your data to me, basically. And I will apply gradient descent and next token prediction to what it is you provide and everybody else that's here. And then I'm going to go back to my team that created this RFP with everything already filled out. And it's going to have whichever company is the winner that I recommend, already done. And it's not going to involve this like pitch and emotional, like, I love this guy, I went to this guy's wedding, I bought from this guy at my last company, I'm bringing them with me to my new company as the revenue leader. I loved whatever product. I don't want to like bash a product, but I loved that product and I'm going to bring it with me. And that's going to, because who controls the purse at the end of the day? The CFO, procurement, you know from a data security standpoint, the CIO is going to be there, right? Like saying, like, we gotta be secure. We can't like, all their rules and whatever. And then, yeah, those agents are going to go out and do their thing. And the people that make the buying decision, they're going to go back to them. That committee will get back together, review the agent's work, and then they'll make a decision. And I believe what will happen at that point in the next iteration of that is it will just turn on. Like that product will just be on and exposed to users, right? And the agent will procure it and it will just live in your environment then. And so then it's like, okay, well, what about onboarding? What about that handoff? No, we have agents that are going to do that. We have agents that, now the product is here. The chat's going to show up for the product. You can talk to it. It can talk to you. You can figure out how to use it. And that's all going to happen. It's just going to show up and you're just going to do it. And that I believe is 1 to 2 years away, maybe. And like, that's going to come so fast and that's going to hit people like a brick in the face, that are in these roles. And it's, I'm not the only one saying it. I think Dario Amodei from Anthropic is out there like screaming from the rooftops for coders and people that are exposed on that vector. But I think people are exposed on this vector too. They just don't realize it yet. Now, that's not to say that like the relationship doesn't still exist at the executive level where the executive like pulls the lever and is like, screw the agent. We're going with like the guy I know at this other this other company. So I still think the people that like have those like ingrained relationships will be able to pull some levers and maybe like override agents at some point. And the agent would just go and like be like, okay, well, they chose you, so let's turn on your product for everybody, and then that product will be live for everybody instead. But what will happen is if you make that call, the agent may be able to evaluate what happens afterwards. It may be able to tell you like you made a bad decision. And that may come back to bite you at some point in the future, right? When like people are like, hey, why the hell do we have this product? And it's like, oh, well, I didn't forget why. And this is why.
That's yeah, it's really because obviously it's the big fear, right? People talk about how the average tenure of a CRO at the moment is like 17 months, and there's so many CMOs out of work right now. If I look at like the LinkedIn Pavilion, sorry,
So
not the LinkedIn, the Pavilion on the Bench community, it's like
I
800 people, some really
yeah,
senior people in there.
let's talk about that because I think that there is an evolution that's going to happen with go to market. And it's happening now for different reasons than what I'm going to mention. But I think today the reason that CMOs and CROs are in transition or turmoil is really because businesses are looking at this as like one function, and they're saying like go to market, revenue, all of this is like one function for us. Um, I'm not here to say whether that's right or wrong. I have points of view on, why it should be multiple functions. My biggest, the biggest issue with CMOs, in my opinion, and I'll take arrows for this. This is a hot take. You can, make a short of, but they don't want to own revenue. They never have. They don't like it. They're like, oh well, I can't control sales, and when sales gets a lead, like whatever they do is whatever they do, and they don't do it right, and da 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 da, right? And like they push back and they push back and they push back on owning revenue. Those that do own revenue and are comfortable with it are becoming CROs, and their titles are changing to CRO, right? And it's because they're comfortable with it. They've like spent a lot of time owning revenue as a CMO. They've, pushed their mandate into sales to the point where like, hey, I don't think you guys are doing that right. My ass is on the line for revenue. And I'm going to get involved in this because my ass is on the line and my paycheck is on the line. And I want to make my bonus and you guys are screwing it up. And so they go in there and they, push their point of view. And if they're right, they become CRO. That's what's happening, right? And so the CMOs that are afraid to own revenue are on the sidelines. The CMOs that are owning revenue and are making an impact with it once they own it are now CROs. And CROs that don't have the marketing skill of a CMO are on the sideline, right? And you're starting to see this like convergence of titles and of people that can do both, and that if they have taste in the fact that like they know what good marketing is, even if they don't know how to do good marketing, or they have taste in the fact that they know so intimately their ICP from doing sales forever that they know what's going to work from messaging and positioning, and they know how these people talk, and they will not compromise on it. and they can go guide a VP of marketing to do good marketing, right? Just based on like their point of view. So the CRO can come over to that side too. And that's what's happening. Now, in the future, this all becomes a lot easier once agents start to come into play and they start to do marketing tasks, they start to do sales tasks, and you have like generalists in marketing who are probably like growth or demand people that understand product and data and like, code to some degree, that can like really with an agent do the rest of the stack. They're going to be like a 10x employee or a 100x employee that can like leverage AI and agents to do the work of like 5 people. And you're going to have in sales these procurement agents taking place, and then you're going to have CS and sales merge into this like relationship manager, basically. Like, I know this buyer and I know these people and I have these contacts, and like I'm the relationship manager with the business. Like, if someone needs someone to bitch at, like they come to me, right? Or if I own the contact with the CIO of like big company X, like, or CFO of big company Y. Like, that's the relationship manager, and that's 2 roles collapsing down. Marketing, you're probably looking at like 3 to 5 roles collapsing into one person. And this is going to become the new team. You're going to have like go to market, like generalists that are leveraging AI to like achieve great leverage. You're going to have, relationship managers who are basically managing relationships. And you're going to have an executive managing that. That's like good, has taste for marketing, or very, is a CMO level marketer and is not afraid to own revenue. And that is going to be the new business unit, I believe, that's going to collapse down from like marketing, sales, and CS. And like you're going to see that convergence take place. Probably it's going to be messy, but it's probably going to take like 3 to 5 years, honestly, for this full transformation to take place, because people are going to fight and claw for, their positions and try to justify why this shouldn't happen and da 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 da. But like, the messy middle takes time to shake out, and that's what's coming. The messy middle is coming. It's coming for revenue teams. It's coming for engineering teams. It's going to come for other things too. We don't need to talk about like restaurant and fast food, but like I've heard scary things about like automating those jobs away, which are hundreds of thousands of jobs. And, there's a messy middle coming across industries, and it's the problem now is like humans have never seen change happen this fast, and we can't adapt to change quickly. We've evolved as mammals for millions of years, and it is not in our brain capacity or our capability to evolve at the same rate that artificial intelligence will evolve. And it's just going to hurt, and it's going to be hard, and I don't know I don't have a point of view on what's going to happen post messy middle, but messy middle is coming. I'm not a doomer. I think like there will be new opportunities for people, and your listeners who adopt and leverage AI will be compensated in great ways, because these businesses are going to become way more profitable. And the people that adopt AI and obtain this leverage and maintain their relationships and deepen those relationships, they will have an amazing place. They will be the kings in the future of go to market, right? And like that kings and queens will, emerge from those that do adopt and get this power and this leverage.
I wonder what it means for startups. So, if you talk about agents, they're going to, particularly for RFPs, right? And, the dream of every startup is to eventually move up to enterprise, where they're selling large average order value with big lifetime value. They can build a business off the back of that. Everyone goes through that transition. If you're and this might be my naivety with this question, but if you're a startup who doesn't have lots of collateral, you're not indexed particularly high on the
Yeah.
LLM. This is making sense so far, right?
Yeah.
How can startups compete in a world where these big competitors will have got so much credibility on these platforms that when these agents go out and look for stuff, there's not like a scrappy salesperson getting hold of that CEO through,
Yeah.
good prospecting. What does he think it means for startups?
Right.
How-
So. I think in the B2B world, startups will face some pressure from that, but I think like what will happen in uh, the startup world is these startups will leverage their code. And what they'll do is they'll be able to provide code samples that meet requirements of the buyer. And so they'll tag their code and schema and whatnot so that the agent can come in and analyze the code, run the code itself, and say, yes, this works. This is validated. This checks this box. This checks this box. This checks this box. You know, maybe there's a validation process of like case studies or whatever, right? That like dings them, but they're going to be able to expose things to these buying agents in code that the agent's going to say, yes, I took the code, pulled it down, I ran it locally, you know, I checked for errors or whatever, and like all good. This is a viable thing. And so that's going to create new leverage for startups that they've never had before because of all the things that you just mentioned, right? Like there's, you know, all kinds of like logo bias and things like that. And I don't think the AI cares. You know, maybe that's in the RFP where it's like, okay, I want to see like case studies and recommendations and like maybe there are audio files and whatever, you know, identity verification coming in to verify that these people are real. Like, you know, you mentioned that other startup, but like, yes, there's, you know, there's a lot of other ancillary things that will happen in the process. But I think it gives them more leverage. And the space I think that's going to thrive, like honestly, is the solopreneur space, or the small scrappy company of 5 to 10 people that has like a rabid following that loves their content and follows them for their point of view and their content. Man, I think like you're going to be able to monetize that content, create new experiences for your followers, new products for your followers, and I think you're gonna be able to do it. And I think you're gonna be able to do it with a chat console. And I think like you're gonna be able to deploy it. We're gonna try to build something for you and your followers tomorrow in this vein. But man, I think like there are unlimited opportunities for new businesses to emerge where like if you can go out and gain a rabid following for whatever it is you do for your unique point of view,
Yeah.
you will be able to leverage AI to give you massive leverage and create new products and new experiences. And really, it's just going to be what is in your imagination and your audience's like request for new products because you're just going to be able to go create it. And like someone's going to leave you a comment and be like, Rich, man, I really wish I could get like a go to market plan from Rich or like a SDR script from Rich. Like, how the hell do I get that from you? Or, you know, whatever. Like, you're just going to take that, copy and paste it into like an AI chat and like it's going to build you a product with you. Right. And then you're going to be like, this is awesome. I tested it out a bunch. I'm going to ship it and I'm going to pop the link into the guy in the comments and let him have at it. Right. And like, think about that, man. Like you is like all these people that are worried, like, you know, agents are going to come for my job. The world is ending, whatever. You know, just think about how you can get in on this new world where you can create things just out of your mind, describing it to an AI. Like you have new ways of working and new ways of business and building passion projects. And if you know you have that project idea that people are like, you know what, you've told your golf buddies or your friends at brunch or whatever, and they're like, man, that sounds really cool. Like I'd love to try that. Try building it. Try going to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and describing what it is you want to build and then building like an MVP and creating like a shareable link and you know sending it to your friends. Like try some passion projects. I think you know the new world, there's going to be a lot more people that are passionate about things, creating products and experiences that are going to be super cool, that are going to like create new businesses that we don't even know about yet. Like new viral things will emerge and you know, I mean, that's great. Like people can follow their passion. I think that's a little bit more of like what a passion working world looks like in the future with AI than like what people are like, oh, you'll be able to follow your passion and do what, you know, like let's talk about what that looks like. This is kind of what that looks like, I think. And um, you know, I think there's a ton of opportunity. So like don't be scared, embrace it and get your leverage, man, from AI. You know, like you can do it. Like It's super easy. It's not going to be like the time suck to go out and find an engineer to help you build like your thing that you had an idea for. Like just try to build it yourself with an AI.
It makes sense. There's some good data I heard around that, which is the average size of a company in the US just 10 years ago was 24 people. It's now 12, just because everyone's leveraging technology so much. And I think it just like mirrors what humans want, right? Like this whole idea that you would work in a company with 10,000 people and stay there for 30 years. Is that what humans want? Does it tickle the sort of the variety and even the significance part of our human needs? I don't really think it does. And if we go back to like how we used to be for generations and generations, is you had a profession, then you were limited in terms of what the skills that you could acquire probably through your family and your area. You were limited in terms of geography of who you could sell to. There was a limitation, but you were in control of your own destiny. You know, you had a profession that you became a master at, rather than this whole like, I am a VP of sales for Series A and Series B businesses, but you know, I only last 15, 16 months before I get booted because they change strategy. And then after you've like been kicked out of a few of those companies 4 or 5 times, you start to go, is this what life's all about? And the amount of people I speak to who are just disillusioned because they go, can I do it again? You know? And like the idea of
Right.
going back into the job market again is just so
I've been there.
unattractive. Yeah.
I've been there. Trust me, I've been there. I've asked myself that question. And here we are, Justin GPT. You were saying like things that I'm gonna call it something else. I'm gonna call it agency and curiosity.
Yeah, yeah, I love it.
Um, and in the past, yes, you like developed these deep skills and you were curious about learning how to do your trade and do whatever it was. You probably were curious or motivated in some way to pursue that path. And you had agency to go out and bust your ass and work hard and learn how to do that. You still have those things. You still have curiosity, you still have agency. Now you have power through these AI models that you never had before. The rules are different. You still have agency, you still have curiosity. The rules are different. Use your agency and curiosity in this new game that is emerging, right? And I want to empower people with this message because I think like so many people are so disillusioned. Like you said, I've been there, man. I've been out of work for 9 months, waiting on the next thing to come along and not knowing like what, am I going to do marketing again? Am I going to do a startup again? It's a hard slog. Like I get it. I get it. Um, that's not the rules of the world anymore. The world has changed and you should think of ways to be curious about AI. There's if you spend time right now building with AI, there are two things that could happen. You could hit a roadblock. You could be like, damn it, I can't do what I want to do. This is too hard. Like I'm stuck. But what you've learned is now how to leverage AI to like an extreme degree that you didn't have before. So now when you go to your next job interview and you're like, damn it, I'm going to go back to VP of sales. I'm going to do it, or go for CRO or whatever. You're going to go back with a point of view on AI and how AI works and how it can be used for your team. You're going to know deeply the capabilities of AI. Building right now with AI and experimenting with AI right now is only beneficial. It is not a wasted time. Even if you get blocked, it's not wasted time. And if you get blocked, DM me, guys. Find me on LinkedIn. Go watch my videos on YouTube. I've got a vibe coding video on how to vibe code an app in 30 minutes, right? So go check out the content. If you get blocked, ping me. I'll try to help you out. I want to bring as many people with me as I can. I was telling Jacob the other day, like he was talking about somebody that was like, a doomer and they were like so down on everything. And I was like, hey man, when I see those kinds of comments, I feel really bad for people. But like, man, I'm out here on the frontier and like to come back and like pick someone up and take them with me back to the frontier is like a lot of time to spend on that. Like I want people to come with me, and that's why I create this content and try to
Yeah.
share my knowledge with people. From like my view of like a VP of marketing, a revenue leader. These you guys can see like I can do it, you can do it. I'm pretty sure. In my videos, you'll see me like troubleshooting things with like AI, right? Like, how do you troubleshoot things with that? Like, it happens, right? Like, yeah, the video looks good, but like, there's a chat window open over there saying like, man, this code isn't working. What's happening?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like, how do I make it work for my video? And like, we figure it out together. But yeah, it's, come with me. Like, let's go together into the future. And I can help folks out if you're feeling stuck or you're feeling down about the future. Just ping me on social, man. Happy to chat.
Yeah, 100%. You'll put your links in the show notes. I have to ask you one more question, Justin, because it's front of mind for me, which is if I log on to LinkedIn today, which obviously is still the only really professional network, there's not really a competitor that other people log into and do their own version of LinkedIn. It is LinkedIn. And I either see people using AI to just literally say, write me a post about this, and it pops up with everything in, first letter capitalization, 2 emojis, EM dashes, 6 hashtags. Like, you just scroll past it because you're like, you've not even put the effort into this post. That's the majority. Then the other extreme, I don't think there's much in between, is I've just created 10 AI agents in GPT-5, comment swarm to go and get
You're
my
sworn.
prompt swipe file, and I've got
Yeah.
some of these. I'm like, that sounds really cool. I want to do it. Also, I'm just like really curious to see what they built as much as anything. But it's like people who are going, I am the master of this thing, and people going, I'm clearly using this because I think it looks good, but everyone else is going, mate, come on, are you still doing that? So I just wonder, like, if we talk about for content, I know you're prolific in terms of your content. We get the same feedback. People can't believe that I'm running a business from a dog hotel, which is my wife's business. We're tiny, but we're so loud. But we're doing a video now, and I'm going, why is someone who's so invested in AI, leveraging content, all this sort of stuff? Why are you doubling down on video
Yeah. Yeah. I
when
mean,
it's most people are just hitting bam, click,
right.
create and post?
Yeah, so what's gonna be the EM dash of GPT-5, right? I think like I want to see that. Like, what's the new EM dash coming out? Great question. There's a couple of points I'll make on this. So I'll start with answering your video question, then I'll go a little bit further on the social networks. But video is right now a medium that you can leverage that still is has a moat, right? Like, you still have a moat around you. It's hard for AI to generate good video. VO3 is out there. There's a lot of new companies starting to leverage VO3. Video will get saturated at some point too, but for now, you can still find the signal through the noise with video, right? You can create great videos. People can find your videos, and there's a moat there that if you invest in anything right now, video is a great investment for that reason. There's not a ton of AI slop out there that's like long in duration and informative, right? I think LinkedIn and text and things like that, where people have found the power of next token prediction for text and writing posts on LinkedIn. It's as easy. Like, I think I have a video on this, which like I now like shudder to think that I even made this, but like, I made a video on like, you just pop a link in a Google form and it posts to your LinkedIn for you about the article that you put in there. And like, I'm like, why did I do that? Like, I should just delete that. Like, because yeah, the social media channels that are text heavy, like Twitter and LinkedIn and to some degree Facebook, those are going to get inundated with like AI bots writing AI slop that looks like a person, and it's going to we're at like the elbow of that right now. I think like you see like power users, and like we're starting to get to mass market adoption. So if you think about the amount of AI slop and like lowbrow posts that you see now, and you're looking at like 10% adoption of like power users and influencers on these channels, wait until the mass market adoption hits, and now increase that by 10x the number of people that have the ability to do that. that 10x is the number of AI slop posts that you're going to get. These people probably don't have the experience to like even realize like how to, mitigate AI slop in their posting. And it's going to get crazy, man. You're not going to be able to go on a social network and look at a feed and find anything. You're just going to be stuck there. And unless the platforms like innovate in some way, um, the feed might have had a good run. The feed might be coming to an end. I think like you're going to see more things like TikTok where like it learns your tastes and it's going to feed you things like that you want to see in your taste, like on good social platforms. And I think like AI slop's going to create a, a good like wedge for those kinds of platforms to emerge. So like, I think LinkedIn's exposed on the AI slop vector. I think X is exposed on the AI slop vector. I think X will leverage AI to reduce slop because they have XAI, right? Like they're going to be an AI company. The other thing that X doesn't want is like they're going to use everything on their platform for training. And if they get synthetic data that's like low quality for training, it's going to impact their model performance. And they're going to do something about that, right? Because they don't want like poor models in the future as an output of like basically AI slop. And that's like one of these like really interesting AI things is like AIs are starting to teach other AIs their bad behavior and like their EM dashes and stuff because they're writing all this content that goes on to Twitter. And then that's going into the next training run, like no one's filtering that out yet. So it's going to be a problem for the model companies that I think they'll end up doing something about it. But yeah, get ready to, just like delete LinkedIn completely because you're not gonna be able to find anything, right? Like the signal for the noise in that kind of world is gonna be terrible. The other thing that I think LinkedIn's exposed on, and I think this is like something people can get excited about for careers and whatnot, is like the LinkedIn and like job process is broken. I think like everyone can agree going out and doing 100 applications a day, every freaking day, as like just to get like one callback in like a month is broken. That process is broken. And then you have to do 15 interviews to even get a job. How bad does that suck, right? This is the disillusionment that you were talking about. Like people are like daunted by this process. It sucks.
Yeah.
So that is broken. There's an opportunity here. And something I'm working on with Jacob right now and some other people is creating an agentic hiring process. So creating agents that like, can represent the talent and agents that can represent the company and collapsing this process down. So like, yeah, you create your agent that represents you. You put your agent out there and then the other agents come from the companies and start engaging with these agents looking for talent. We're going to be able to place people into roles so much faster than like, and it'll be more passive, right? And there'll be fewer interviews because the agent will have all of this knowledge about you as the candidate that like, why do you need to meet with like the 15th person who could just like go and ask the agent what they need or like look at your previous interviews and they could surface like the footage, from your interview you had with someone else. So we're going to work on that problem. Silver linings, hopefully, for people hearing about that. Like, it doesn't exist today, but we're working hard on that problem. It's something that we're passionate about. And I think that there's a real opportunity there. And, we're going to go try to tackle that. So stay tuned.
I like it. Please make sure from a company side, you start by a proper discovery process around what they need, because the biggest problem in recruitment, and no one talks about it, is that job adverts and briefings that go out to market and collect 500 applications for every single job post are not done after proper discovery. And so they just send out this generic thing and then attract 500 people who go, that could be interesting, easy applied, bosh. And I think this is the real value of good salespeople. And then the good agents will be trained on these salespeople is they do a proper discovery process to say, hey, Mr. Client, you've told me you need X. That's a terrible mistake because of these reasons.
Right.
And that wisdom of showing people that what they're telling you they want is really going to hurt them, I think is a huge amount of value.
I think so too. I think like for the talent demand side, yeah, helping those folks discover who they really need. There's an opportunity there to like leverage, the experience we have from working with other folks eventually to like say like, hey, we've worked with however many people we worked with and hired people for similar roles. Like seems to be the requirements that stick, right? And like these kinds of things, and like this is what we're seeing. And I think like what this leads to too is like a disruption of like recruitment to some degree, where it's like, if it's good, who cares if we like make it like success based pricing, like if it's good and the person gets hired and they stay for a year, and there's, a success fee at that point,
Mm.
right? And that's the whole
Uh,
pricing model is like, okay, how much does it cost to get you someone that like stays for this amount of time? That, we're fine waiting on you to pay us then. Like, like we'll just wait because the product's that good. And I
yeah,
think like that new pricing model for like, for AI products is going to be very compelling. I think you're starting to see it with like companies like Sierra, that do like, if I resolve a ticket or something, then you pay me for that. You don't pay me for, my platform or tokens or anything like that. You pay for like a resolution. And I think like, pay for like a candidate that sticks is like something that could be quite disruptive to, the market. So we'll see.
amazing, amazing. As a final thought, Justin, is there is there a message that you would like to leave our audience with? Because I think we definitely
Yeah.
do with our other podcasts in the future. But what's the message you want to leave our audience with from this conversation?
I want people, that are feeling disillusioned and feeling scared and feeling, like they're getting left behind to not feel that way. I want you to feel empowered, learn how to leverage your agency and your curiosity within the new rules of the new game. And if you are having trouble figuring that out, come find me, come talk to me, and I will help you get there. So that's the message I want everyone to have. It's a message of hope. Don't feel like you're getting left behind. You can do it too, and we'll do it together.
Amazing. Dan Sullivan says, put a very smart human between you and the technology. And I'm very glad that I found you, Justin.
Well, if I'm checking a Dan Sullivan box, I'm doing something right. Thanks, Rich. I had a great time, man.
Absolutely. Justin, you're an absolute gent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this conversation, we've got a newsletter called Growth Magnet on LinkedIn, where we take the best insights from all of these episodes and turn them into bite-sized format for you to enjoy.